Kids, dinner is ready. Come eat before it gets cold.
Here, try some of this bulgogi.
It looks delicious, honey.
I want some too.
No! One more minute, please.
No, it's time to sleep.
Do you want me to tell you a good night story?
Yes!
Yes! Your stories are the best!
Okay, the title of our story is HUNTRX Crashed on an Island.
Okay, it all started as the best day of their lives. That is the thing about the best days. They never announce themselves as the best days. They just show up looking like ordinary days. And then something shifts. And suddenly everything is golden and perfect. And you think, yes, this is it. This is one of those days I will remember forever. HUNTRX had just finished the most successful concert tour of their entire career. 6 cities, 6 sold-out shows, 6 nights of standing in front of thousands of people who knew every word of every song and sang them back so loud that the whole building shook. 6 nights of lights and music, and that feeling, that enormous, indescribable feeling of doing exactly the thing you were put on this earth to do. And now they were going home. Bobby had arranged everything, as Bobby always arranged everything, with tremendous efficiency and a laminated itinerary that he had prepared 3 weeks in advance. Private jet, comfortable seats, good food, estimated arrival time at home airport, 9:30 in the evening. Everything perfectly organized, perfectly planned. The jet was beautiful, small but elegant, with wide soft seats and warm lighting and little round windows that showed you the sky in a way that made you feel like you were part of it. Rumi had the window seat because she always had the window seat, and everyone had long since accepted this as a fundamental law of air travel. Mira was next to her, immediately investigating the snack selection with focused enthusiasm. Zoey was across the aisle, already settled with her book, feet tucked up, completely at home, 30,000 feet above the ground. The Saja Boys were in the back, in various states of post-concert relaxation. The feathered hat Saja Boy had his hat over his face. The socks Saja Boy had his socks off, which Bobby had gently but firmly asked him to reconsider, and he had reconsidered for approximately 4 minutes before the socks came off again. The sound desk Saja Boy was asleep before they even reached cruising altitude, which was a talent everyone quietly envied. The toast Saja Boy was eating something naturally, and Jinu was in the window seat at the very back, long legs stretched out, looking at the sky with that expression of his that was hard to read, somewhere between thoughtful and somewhere far away. Bobby was in the front seat nearest the cockpit, clipboard on his knee, going through the post-tour paperwork with the thorough satisfaction of a man who loves a completed checklist. Derpy was in his carrier under Rumi's seat, which he had accepted with the resigned dignity of a cat who knows when he is not going to win an argument. Occasionally, a blue paw appeared through the carrier door and waved vaguely at nothing, which was how Derpy expressed his opinions about air travel. For the first 2 hours, everything was perfect. The jet hummed along through a clear, dark sky full of stars. The food was good. Mira had investigated every snack available and delivered a comprehensive review to anyone who would listen, which was everyone, because Mira's snack reviews were genuinely excellent. Rumi watched the stars through her round window and felt the deep, particular tiredness that comes after something big has been completed. The good tiredness, the earned tiredness, the kind that sits warmly in your bones rather than dragging at you. Then the sky changed. It changed fast. Rumi noticed it first because she was watching the window. One moment stars, the next a wall of cloud that had come from nowhere, thick and dark and low. And then the jet shuddered. Just once, just slightly, but enough. Bobby looked up from his clipboard. Jinu sat up in his seat at the back. Then the turbulence hit. Real turbulence, not the gentle rocking kind that makes your drink wobble, but the serious kind that drops you several feet without warning and makes your stomach do things it has no business doing. The jet jolted and pitched, and the overhead lights flickered, and Mira grabbed Rumi's arm with both hands and Derpy's paw, disappeared back into the carrier very quickly. "Everybody stay calm," Bobby said, in the voice of someone who was himself, staying extremely calm through what appeared to be a significant act of will. Then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing some unexpected weather. I need everyone to fasten their seatbelts and remain seated. We are going to try to get through this quickly. Try, that word, try. That was not a word you particularly wanted to hear from the person flying your plane. The next 20 minutes were, to put it simply, a lot." The jet bucked and dropped and shook, and the wind outside was audible through the walls, howling and enormous, and the clouds around them were so thick they might as well have been flying through a wall of dark cotton. Lightning appeared somewhere in the distance, flickering silently, lighting up the clouds in brief cold blue. Rumi had her belt on and her hand on Derpy's carrier, and she was doing the thing she always did when things were difficult, which was breathe. Just breathe. Steady and even and slow. In and out. If you could control your breathing, you could control your fear. And if you could control your fear, you could think. And if you could think, you could help. Mira had both hands over her eyes and was talking. A continuous quiet stream of something that was part prayer and part commentary and part, at one point, a detailed description of every snack she wished she had eaten before this happened, just in case. Zoey had her book closed and her hands folded in her lap and her eyes open and her face absolutely calm. She was the stillest person on the jet. She was possibly the stillest person anywhere. From the back of the jet came Jinu's voice, clear and steady. "Everyone okay back here? Sound off." 4 voices confirmed they were okay. Shaken, but okay. "Good," said Jinu. "Stay belted. We'll be through this." And then the engine made a sound it had absolutely no business making. A deep coughing shudder that went through the whole jet like a shiver. And the lights went out completely for 3 seconds. And when they came back on, they were dim and orange. And the pilot was on the intercom again, and his voice was different this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have lost power to the right engine. We are going to need to make an emergency landing. I have located an area ahead. Please brace positions. This is a precaution. Stay calm. Brace positions. Right." What followed was something that none of them would ever entirely be able to describe accurately afterward, because the brain, during something like that, does not record things the way a camera does. It records feelings. The feeling of the jet tilting, nose down, more than it should. The feeling of speed. The feeling of the darkness outside rushing past the windows. The sound of the wind and the engines and Bobby saying in a very controlled voice, "Everyone down, heads down, hold on." The feeling of bracing. And then a sound like the whole world stopping. A great tearing, rushing, crashing sound that went through everything. And then there was the jet on the ground, or something like the ground, bumping and skidding and shaking, and then slowing, slowly, slowly, and then still, complete stillness. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody said anything. The only sound was the wind outside and the ticking of the cooling jet, and somewhere, from under Rumi's seat, the very small and extremely indignant sound of Derpy expressing his views on the situation. Then Mira said, in a very small voice, "Are we alive?" "Yes," said Rumi. "Good," said Mira. "Good, okay, good." Jinu was already up, moving through the jet, checking on everyone. Quick and efficient, no drama, just moving person to person and confirming they were okay. And they were, all of them, shaken and wide-eyed, and thoroughly rattled, but unharmed. Not a scratch between them, which was remarkable. Bobby was sitting very upright in his seat, holding his clipboard and his thermos, both of which he had held onto through the entire thing. And he was very pale, but entirely composed. "Is everyone all right?" he said, in a voice that was doing excellent work. Everyone confirmed they were all right. "Good," said Bobby. He looked at his clipboard. He looked at the ceiling. He took a breath. "Good," he said again, more quietly. Rumi unclipped her belt and picked up Derpy's carrier and looked through the door at him. Derpy looked back at her. His amber eyes were very wide, and his blue fur was standing up slightly, which was a new look for him, but he was unharmed. He stared at her with an expression that said, very clearly, "I would like to register a formal complaint about this entire evening." And she laughed, a small, helpless laugh that was mostly relief, and said, "I know, Derpy, I know. The pilot came back from the cockpit. He was calm and professional, and he confirmed that everyone was okay, and that the jet had sustained significant damage and would not be flying again tonight, or possibly for several nights, and that they had come down on what appeared to be an island. An island. Everyone absorbed this. What island? Bobby said, pen already poised over clipboard. The pilot shook his head slowly. I'm not entirely sure, he said. It wasn't on the flight path. I found it on the radar right at the last moment. The instruments were behaving strangely in the storm. He paused. I am not certain it appears on the standard maps. Another moment of everyone absorbing this. An island that isn't on the maps, said the feathered hat Saja Boy, slowly. That's not ominous at all, said the toast Saja Boy. It's fine, said Jinu immediately, and something in his voice made everyone look at him, and he had an expression that suggested it might not be entirely fine, but that he had decided it was going to be. We are all okay. We are on solid ground. We will assess the situation, make a plan, and deal with it. That is what we are going to do. He looked around at everyone. Agreed, he said. And everyone, even Bobby, even Mira, who still had slightly wild eyes, agreed. They came out of the jet, one by one, into the night air, and the island received them. It was dark, deeply dark, the kind of dark that only exists far from cities and their light. But it was not a frightening dark. The sky above them was extraordinary. More stars than any of them had ever seen. So many stars that the sky looked almost bright with them. A great thick river of them across the darkness that was the Milky Way, close and clear and enormous. The air smelled of salt and green things, warm despite the hour. And there was the sound of the sea somewhere close, a steady rhythmic sound that was deeply, immediately calming, the oldest sound in the world. The jet had come down on a wide, flat stretch of pale sand that curved away in both directions into the dark. Behind the beach was the island, which rose up in dark shapes against the star-filled sky. Trees and hills, and something that might have been a rocky outcropping far to the north. Okay, said Mira, after a long moment of looking at all of it. Honestly, as crash landings go, this is pretty. Nobody could argue with this. Bobby had already clicked on his torch and was making notes on his clipboard. He had, it emerged, a complete emergency protocol in his bag that he had prepared at the start of the tour, because Bobby always prepared for everything, including this, and he began moving through it with calm efficiency. Check all persons. Check supplies. Establish shelter. Establish communication options. Communications were the first problem. Phones had no signal, not one single bar between all of them, which was both expected given they were on an unmapped island, and also deeply inconvenient. The pilot had an emergency beacon, which he activated immediately, which meant that someone, somewhere, would eventually know where they were and come for them. Eventually. how eventually Mira asked. It could be morning, the pilot said, or it could be longer, depending on the weather and where exactly we are. Longer than morning, Mira repeated. Possibly, the pilot said, apologetically. Mira nodded slowly. Then she reached into her bag and took stock of her snacks with the focused seriousness of a general assessing her ammunition. And she had a surprising amount, because Mira always had a surprising amount, and she redistributed them with the careful logic of someone rationing supplies. And nobody made any jokes about this, because it was actually very useful. They set up camp on the beach near the jet, which provided both shelter and a landmark. And Bobby produced from his emergency bag an assortment of things that suggested he had spent considerable time imagining exactly this scenario, including a compact emergency blanket, waterproof matches, and a small but effective torch for each person. The feathered hat Saja Boy had found a collection of large flat rocks that formed a natural windbreak, and declared it the official sitting area. And everyone settled into it with the weary gratitude of people who have had a very large evening and are very glad to be sitting down. The fire came next. The sock Saja Boy turned out to be unexpectedly excellent at building fires, which was information that surprised everyone and which he received with quiet pride. And within 20 minutes, there was a good warm fire going in the center of the rock formation, and the circle of its light was warm and orange and very welcome. Derpy had been released from his carrier and had immediately walked to the warmest spot nearest the fire and arranged himself there with the absolute assurance of a cat who intends to make the best of any situation. He had sniffed the sea air, assessed the sand, and apparently made his peace with the island in approximately 4 minutes flat. He's so relaxed, said the sound desk Saja Boy, watching Derpy with something between admiration and envy. He's a cat, said Zoey. Cats are very good at being exactly where they are. I want to be a cat, said the sound desk Saja Boy. You and me both, said Mira. They sat around the fire and ate Mira's carefully rationed snacks and drank tea from Bobby's thermos, which Bobby had somehow kept warm through the entire crash and the subsequent chaos, and which tasted, in that moment, like the best tea any of them had ever had in their lives. The island was quiet around them. The sea moved against the shore in its steady rhythm. The stars were enormous overhead. The fire crackled and shifted and sent little sparks up into the dark air. And then Rumi heard something. She heard it during a gap in the conversation, a brief lull where the fire was crackling and the sea was breathing, and everything was still for just a moment. It was faint, very faint, coming from somewhere inland, from the dark interior of the island beyond the beach. A sound, not wind, not an animal exactly. Something between the two, and something else as well. Something that made the small hairs on her arms stand up not with fear, but with the particular feeling that comes when something is significant. When something is more than it appears. She looked at Zoey. Zoey was already looking at her. You heard it too, Rumi said. Yes, said Zoey. What? Said Mira, looking between them. Something in the island, Zoey said. Everyone went quiet and listened, and then they all heard it. Even Bobby, who put down his thermos and lifted his head like an animal catching a scent. Even the Saja Boys, who had been mid-conversation and simply stopped. Even Derpy, who opened both amber eyes and stared toward the dark interior of the island with an expression of deep and focused interest. It was a sound like singing, but not singing. Like music, but not any music made by instruments. It was more fundamental than that, older, like the sound the island itself was making, as though the trees and the rocks and the earth were all vibrating together at exactly the right frequency, producing this one quiet, extraordinary sound. Jinu was on his feet. He was standing very still, with his face toward the island, and his eyes slightly narrowed, and his expression was unreadable. But his whole body was alert in a way that was different from his usual alert. You know what that is, Rumi said to him. It was not a question. Jinu was quiet for a moment. Then he said, This island is old, very old, older than maps. Some places like this exist outside of ordinary geography. They drift, they appear and disappear. They exist on their own terms. He paused. And some of them are inhabited. Inhabited by what? Said the toast Saja boy, very carefully. Not people, Jinu said. Not exactly. Older than people. He looked at Rumi. Not dangerous, but very, very real. Another silence. The sound from the island continued, soft and low and steady, neither inviting nor warning, simply present. Should we go and look? Mira said. Everyone looked at her. I mean, she said, we are on a mysterious, unmapped island in the middle of the night after a plane crash, and there is a mysterious sound coming from inside it. We are either going to sit here wondering about it all night, or we are going to go and look. She looked around at everyone. And I do not think any of us are going to sit here wondering about it all night. She was right. Absolutely, completely, obviously right. You could see it on every face around the fire. Bobby made a small note on his clipboard. Then he stood up and straightened his jacket and picked up his torch. Right, he said, together. Nobody goes ahead. Nobody goes alone. They left the pilot with the jet, with strict instructions to maintain the beacon and stay put. And they moved as a group up from the beach and into the island. The trees began almost immediately, tall and old and broad, their roots enormous and sprawling on the ground between them, their canopy thick overhead. But the starlight came through in places, enough to see by together with their torches, and the ground was navigable, and the sound guided them, growing slightly clearer as they moved deeper in, still faint but present, a thread to follow through the dark. The island smelled extraordinary, green and rich and ancient, like a very old forest, like something that had been growing undisturbed for so long it had developed its own particular quality of air, warmer than the beach, full of things blooming and breathing and being. Mira was walking very close to Rumi and pointing her torch at everything with tremendous interest. "Look at this tree," she whispered, stopping to look at an enormous twisted trunk. "This tree is older than everything." "Keep moving," said Jinu quietly from the front. "I'm appreciating it," Mira whispered back. "I can appreciate and move simultaneously." She could not, as it happened, and the sock Saja Boy walked into her from behind, and there was a brief torch-dropping incident that the feathered hat Saja Boy sorted out, and they all agreed to appreciate trees while walking rather than stopping deeper into the island. The sound was clearer now. Not just one sound, but layered, multiple voices of the island, the trees and the earth, and something beneath the earth, all in their slow, ancient harmony. And walking through, it felt like walking through music made of air. Felt like something settling in your chest and your shoulders and the back of your neck. All the tension of the evening and the crash and the uncertainty softening, loosening, releasing. Bobby noticed it. He mentioned it quietly to Zoey as they walked. "I feel rather better than I did 20 minutes ago," he said, with mild surprise. "Yes," said Zoey. "The island is doing that." "Is it safe?" Bobby asked. "Very," said Zoey. Bobby accepted this and made a small note. Then Jinu stopped. He stopped so completely and so suddenly that the whole group stopped with him, a chain reaction, and everyone looked at what he was looking at. They had come to a clearing, different from any clearing they had seen before. It was perfectly circular, which natural clearings never are, and the ground within it was covered in something that at first looked like grass, but was not grass. Something that grew flat and close to the earth and glowed, very faintly, a soft silver green, the way things glow when they absorb light all day and release it slowly in the dark. And in the center of the clearing, sitting on a rock that was not a rock, or was a rock, but was also something more than a rock, was a creature. It was small, about the size of a large cat. It had the general shape of something between a fox and an owl, with wide, luminous eyes that were deep green and calm and ancient. And it was covered in something that might have been fur or might have been very fine feathers, dark gray with an iridescence that shifted in color as you looked at it, the way a hummingbird's feathers shift, never the same color twice. It was looking at them, not frightened, not aggressive, simply looking with those ancient green eyes, with the patient stillness of something that has existed for a very long time and is not surprised by very much. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed particularly well either. Then Derpy, who had followed them the whole way from the beach, who had been padding silently through the dark trees on his own agenda, walked calmly past everyone's legs, through the glowing grass of the clearing, and sat down in front of the creature on the rock. The creature looked at Derpy. Derpy looked at the creature. They regarded each other with the mutual respect of two beings who understand each other immediately and completely. And then Derpy did the slow blink, his deepest and most sincere slow blink. And the creature did something with its eyes that was not a blink, but served the same purpose. And something was decided between them in that moment that nobody else fully understood, but everyone felt. "Of course," said Jinu softly. "Of course it was the cat." They came into the clearing slowly, following Derpy's lead, and they sat in the glowing grass around the edge of it. And the creature on the rock watched them all with its ancient green eyes, and the sound of the island was all around them, and through them, and the stars overhead were magnificent, and the warm island air was full of living things, and everything was strange and beautiful and completely, utterly safe. Jinu sat closest to the creature. He spoke to it, not in words exactly, but in something older than words, something that came from the same place in him that had known to sing in the far dreaming, that quiet, honest part of him that existed underneath all the performance and the mischief. And the creature responded, not in words either, in feeling, in images that arrived whole and warm in the minds of everyone sitting in the clearing, clear as anything. This was what they understood. The island was a keeper, one of many. Islands like this existed at the edges of the world, unmapped and unvisited, and their purpose was to hold something, to preserve something, to keep safe the things that were too old or too precious or too fragile to exist in the ordinary world. This island held the memory of music, not any particular music, not songs or compositions, but the memory of what music was for. The reason behind the reason, the why underneath all the whys. It had been here since before anyone was making music anywhere. It would be here after. It did not need anything from them, but it had called to them, this island, when they fell from the sky, because something in them resonated with it. Because HUNTRX and their music came from the same deep place this island was keeper of, and the island knew its own. They sat there for a long time. None of them spoke. There was nothing to say that the silence was not already saying better. The glowing grass was soft beneath them. The creature sat on its rock with the patience of geological time. Derpy sat before it like a small blue ambassador. The fire they had left on the beach was a warm, distant orange glow visible through the trees. At some point, Mira leaned her head on Rumi's shoulder, and her eyes were very bright. At some point, the feathered hat Saja boy lay back in the glowing grass and looked up at the stars and made no sound at all, which was unusual for him. At some point, Bobby quietly poured the last of his tea and sipped it and made no notes. And Jinu sat with his knees up and his arms on his knees and his face open in the way it only very rarely was, looking at the creature on the rock. And there was something in his expression that was very close to gratitude. Eventually, in its own time, the creature moved. It stepped down from the rock and walked to Jinu and looked at him for a long moment. Then it walked to Rumi each of them in turn, looking at them with its deep green ancient eyes. And each person felt, when those eyes were on them, something very specific and very personal, something that was exactly what they needed to feel. And that was different for each of them, and that was private. When it came to Derpy, it stopped for a moment, and they looked at each other again. And then the creature made the first actual sound any of them had heard it make. A sound like a very quiet bell, one note, clear and clean. And Derpy made a sound back. And that was that. Then the creature turned and walked back to its rock and settled on it and closed its great green eyes. And they understood that the time was complete. They walked back through the dark trees to the beach, quieter than they had gone in, each of them carrying something warm and full and hard to name. The way you carry a good dream into the morning, present and real, but difficult to describe. The fire was still going on the beach. The pilot was there, awake, with a thermos of his own he had found somewhere on the jet, and he handed cups out wordlessly, reading the group correctly and asking no questions. They sat around the fire, and the sea moved against the shore, and the stars were beginning, at the very edge of the horizon, to make room for the first faint gray of dawn. Not yet, not close, but the suggestion of it there, the way the sky's quality changes before any light arrives. Nobody talked for a while. They sat with the fire and the sea and the memory of the clearing and the creature and the glowing grass and all of it. And it was warm and it was quiet and it was completely enough. Then Mira said, "I'm going to be honest. That was the most incredible thing that has ever happened to me. And I once met a baby elephant. The elephant was also incredible," said Zoey. "The elephant was incredible," Mira agreed. "This was more incredible." "What exactly?" said the feathered hat Saja Boy carefully. "Did it show you? When it looked at you? If that's okay to ask." Mira thought about it. "It showed me that the reason I love music is real," she said. "Like not just a feeling I have, actually real. Like it matters in a way that goes beyond anything I can explain." She paused. "It showed me that I am exactly where I should be." A silence. "Yes," said Rumi quietly. "That is what it showed me too." "And me," said Zoey. One by one, they said yes. Some with words, and some just with a nod. And even Bobby said yes, quietly, looking into the fire with an expression of private peace. And Jinu said nothing. But he nodded once, very slightly, and looked at the fire and was still. The dawn came slowly. The way good things come, without hurry. The sky changing by degrees from deep black to navy, to the dark blue of very early morning, and the stars fading one by one, and the sea becoming visible in the growing light, vast and silver gray and beautiful, and then with the light, the sound. Not the island's sound this time, a different sound. The rhythmic thud of helicopter blades somewhere to the east, growing slowly louder, and a light appearing, small at first, and then larger. A searchlight sweeping over the water. The rescue. Bobby was on his feet immediately, signaling with his torch, and the helicopter adjusted its heading toward them, and the pilot fired a flare, and within 20 minutes, the helicopter was circling, and then descending to the wide, flat beach. Everything that followed was the practical business of being found and being safe, which was good and necessary, and considerably less beautiful than the night had been, but welcome all the same. Blankets, hot drinks, radios, the efficient and kind movements of rescue workers who had done this before and knew exactly what was needed. Rumi stood on the beach while it all happened around her and looked back at the island, at the dark tree line, at the interior where the clearing was, where the creature was, sitting on its rock with its ancient green eyes. Derpy was in her arms. He was looking at the island too. Rumi touched her bracelet. It was warm. "Thank you," she said quietly, to the island, to the trees, to the creature she could not see from here, but could still feel present and ancient and steady. The way the deep things are always steady. The island was quiet, but the air moved, just once, warm and slightly different from the sea breeze, coming from inland, from the green heart of the island. A single breath of warm green air that touched her face and was gone. And that was answer enough. In the helicopter, on the way back to the mainland, Rumi sat with Derpy in her lap and watched the island through the window. It was visible below them for a while, a dark shape surrounded by silver water, unremarkable from the air, looking like any small island on any ordinary sea. Then the clouds came, and when they cleared, the island was gone. Not hidden, gone. The water where it had been was empty and ordinary, and nothing in the waves below suggested it had ever been there at all. Rumi looked at Jinu, who was in the seat beside her. Jinu was looking at the water where the island had been. "Gone," he said. "Gone," she agreed. "Was it real?" said the toast Saja Boy from the seat behind. "Yes," said everyone, simultaneously, in several different voices, without any hesitation at all. The toast Saja Boy nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Okay, good. I just wanted to check." Bobby had his clipboard and was completing the incident documentation with professional focus. But at one point, Rumi glanced over and noticed that he had written at the bottom of the page, in small, neat letters, the words, "Extraordinary, quite extraordinary," and that he had underlined them twice. She did not mention it. They landed at the home airport at 9:30 in the morning, which meant they had been away from home for an entire night, and the morning was bright and clear, and the city was its usual busy, wonderful self, and the air smelled of coffee and warm bread from the bakery nearby, and everything was familiar and good. They stood outside the airport together, all of them, slightly rumpled and deeply tired, and carrying the night with them in their faces and their eyes. And the city moved around them with its ordinary, magnificent business. "Right," said Bobby, closing his clipboard. "I think everyone should go home, sleep, eat something proper, and tomorrow, we debrief. He looked at all of them over the top of his glasses. I have significant notes. Everyone laughed. The good kind of laugh, warm and full and real. One by one, they said goodbye. The Saja Boys peeled off toward their part of the city with the easy, unhurried goodbyes of people who will see each other very soon. Zoey hugged Rumi once, properly, with both arms, and then walked away in her pale gray coat, serene as always. Mira hugged everyone, including Bobby, who received it with great dignity and hugged her back just as warmly. And then she went, bouncing slightly as she walked, already on her phone, already messaging, already filling the world with her particular golden energy. Bobby took a car home. Before he got in, he stopped and looked back at Rumi and Jinu, who were the last two standing, and he said, in his quiet, sincere voice, "That was the most remarkable night of my life, and I have had many remarkable nights." He paused. I just thought someone should say that out loud, and he got in the car, and it drove away. Rumi and Jinu stood on the pavement outside the airport, with Derpy's carrier between them. The city was going about its morning. People with coffees and bags, and their own lives, walking and moving and being. All the ordinary, extraordinary business of a city fully alive. So said Jinu. So said Rumi. A pause. Unmapped island, said Jinu. Ancient creature, said Rumi. Glowing grass, said Jinu. Plane crash, said Rumi. All of us safe, said Jinu. All of us safe, Rumi agreed. Another pause. Good night, said Jinu. And it was not a question or a compliment exactly, just a statement of a fact. The way you might say, that was a good meal, or that was a good song, with simple, honest recognition. Very good night, said Rumi. Jinu looked at Derpy's carrier. Derpy's amber eyes looked back at him through the mesh. He knew, said Jinu. He walked straight to it. He always knows, said Rumi. Jinu crouched down and looked at Derpy directly. And Derpy gave him the one eye open, the same as the greenhouse. The same slow amber one-eyed regard of absolute recognition. Jinu looked at the one eye for a moment. Then he stood up and said, "I'll see you tomorrow," and walked away into the morning city, his hands in his pockets. And he did not look back. But after half a block, he did do one thing that Rumi saw clearly. He smiled. Not his usual smirk. Something real and warm and private turned down toward the pavement for nobody but himself. Rumi watched him go. Then she picked up Derpy's carrier and walked home through the bright morning city, through the streets she knew and loved, past the fountain and the bookshop and the little park with the willow trees. And the city was beautiful around her the way it always was. And the morning was good, and she was tired in the very best way, and she was home. She let herself into her flat, set Derpy's carrier down, opened it. Derpy stepped out, stretched, walked directly to his pale blue velvet sofa, climbed on, and was asleep in approximately 60 seconds. Rumi stood and looked at him for a moment. Then she smiled. and went to her bedroom and lay down under her grandmother's yellow star quilt and listened to the sounds of the city outside her window, familiar and warm and good. She thought about the island, about the glowing grass and the ancient eyes and the warm breath of the island's air on her face, about Jinu sitting in the clearing with his face open and honest, about Mira saying she was exactly where she should be, about Bobby's underlined words at the bottom of his clipboard, about Derpy walking through the dark toward the creature with complete calm certainty. She thought about the sound the island made, still there in her memory, still present if she was very quiet and very still. The deep, warm harmony of old things in their right place. She closed her eyes, and the morning was bright outside her curtains, and the city hummed its ordinary song, and Derpy was asleep on his sofa, and all her people were home and safe, and carrying the night with them like something precious. And she slept deeply and completely, the sleep of someone who has been somewhere real and come back changed in the best possible way. And now, little one, it is your turn. You have been on quite a journey tonight. The crash and the island and the glowing grass and the ancient creature with the deep green eyes, the fire on the beach and the stars overhead, the slow dawn coming up over the sea, all of it. Now it is time to rest. Let your body go heavy and warm like Derpy on his velvet sofa. Let your arms sink down. Let your legs go soft. Let your breathing slow. In and out. In and out. Slow and deep and warm. Rumi is asleep under her yellow star quilt. Mira is asleep, surrounded by her soft toys. Zoey is asleep in her peaceful gray room. Bobby is asleep in his armchair. Clipboard on the side table. Thermos on the floor. A small smile on his face. The Saja Boys are asleep, all 5 of them, and the feathered hat is on the bedpost, and the socks are on the floor, and the room is warm and quiet, and Jinu is asleep, somewhere in the city, smiling that small private smile even in his sleep, dreaming of glowing grass and ancient eyes, and a blue cat who walked straight to the heart of things without hesitation. And somewhere in the wide silver sea, an island drifts, unmapped, unhurried, kept by something old and patient and full of the memory of music. And its clearing glows softly in the dark, silver green, and a creature sits on its rock and closes its ancient eyes, and the island breathes, and the sea breathes, and you breathe, in and out, all the way down into the warm, and the soft, and the still. Your dream is ready. It has been waiting for you. Close your eyes. There it is. Good night, precious one. Good night, desert island, airplane crescent sparkles.